Hi Internet, it's me again, Spottercat. I'm going to be doing a review today of An Irresistible Urge to Fall for Your Enemies, or Enemy. This book is big and popular at the moment. There's been a special edition out at one of the crate boxes. So today's review is based on the copy I read, which I got from my local library, which is standard edition. And I'm going to say it's a 2.5 stars at best, and I'm going to explain that rating to you after we read the blurb. Orsic Mordement, a member of the Phaean Order of Assassins, is in dire need of healing. Naturally, such is the grim comedy of fate. The only healer who can help is Ariane Ferrum, a preeminent scientist and bastion of moral good and member of an enemy order. Ariane is desperate for funding to heal the sick, so desperate that when Orsic bribes her into helping him, she accepts even if she detests him and everything he stands for. A forced collaboration ensues. The brilliant woman is coerced into working for the PhD of murder. Much to Ariane's disgust, as Orsic and Ariane work together to heal his illness and investigate the mysterious reoccurrence of a deadly pox, they find themselves adamantly defying their attraction, which only fuels the heat between them. So that's the blurb. I'm not a huge fan of this book. The first thing about it is there's not a lot of world building in it. Most of that is done in the front of the book, where you get your map, which is just England with new names, then a section on how the orders all work together, and the locations are all here from the map. Then you've got the imagery of the orders, the pronunciation guide, which was super useful for me because I suck at that. So that was the world building was all done in that part. There's not a great deal of it being done in the actual text of the book. There is a little bit, but most of it is done in those few pages. Going to note there is a content warning here. So about medical procedures, swearing, things like that, sick children, minor character death on the page, things like that. So if you're not into that in your books, this isn't for you either. So a lot of that world building is done there. I do like that each chapter has its own title and a little illustration, but I wasn't a huge fan. First 250 pages are really just Orsic and Ariane, which I'm probably pronouncing both of them wrong, having conversations, meeting up to do the healing, to work out what's wrong with him specifically, and to prevent him being caught by his order for talking to her and for being unwell. So a majority of the first 250 pages is really just them having arguments, talking, dealing with that, and the backstory of the illness, the pox, happening in the background at Ariane's medical order facility. To me, the animosity wasn't as well built as I've seen in other enemies to lovers books. It's like you can tell they dislike each other, but they're not super hating on each other. It's not this massive, rage inducing. I don't feel it. The conversations at times feel to me difficult, like not well written in my opinion. But the last 100 pages is where the plot kicks in, where we start to discover that there is a larger plot around the illness that's being given to children in their world, and that there may be people involved in that both from his order and her order. So there's big conspiracy you start to see. That's when I really started to get interested because, like I said, the enemy to lovers stuff was not particularly well written in the first 200 odd pages. So the last 100 pages where the conspiracy and the plot about that kicking off was when I started to become more interested and wanted to get to the end. The problem is we find out there's a big conspiracy and that there are people involved, and then the book ends. Because this book is really just building, because it is the first book in the Dearly Beloathed series now, which means they're building for a second book, possibly a third. For me, ending it where they did was, it makes me go, oh yeah, I'll probably read the next book. But it really, the first 250 pages were a bit of a slog. The last 100 pages were interesting, and then the end. So for me, it's 2.5 stars at best. You can clearly tell this started out as something else. So it did start out as a fanfic for Harry Potter. You can clearly tell that it started out as something else because the world building is minimal. It's almost like you're supposed to know the world from somewhere else before you get into that world. And that's where the biggest issue is for me. To have to read the half a dozen pages at the beginning to get the basics of the magic system and how the world interacts without building that into the original plot was where this book fell down for me. Will I read book 2? I'm not sure, probably, because I'm picking it up from the library, so yes. Would I buy this book? No. I would not buy this book. I'm glad I got it from the library because it's not a book I'm going to pick up again, I don't think. Like I said, first 200 pages, bit of a slog. So 2.5 stars, maybe a 2. That's what it'll get on Goodreads from me because it's not brilliant. It really needed more work before being published, in my opinion. It really needed more world building in the narrative so that it worked better. The conversations were difficult to really get into. The way they speak to one another is it's very formal, but it's done in a strange sort of way. I'm not sure how to explain it. It doesn't seem to flow naturally, is what I'm trying to say. And yeah, it's not a very good book in my opinion. It needed more editing, more work, more world building. So 2 stars. Would I buy it? No. But if you're looking for a light read that's not great, this is the book for you. So that's The Irresistible Urge to Fall for Your Enemies. Glad I didn't spend the money on the special edition from the Loot Crate. I mean, if this were on special for $10, I'd probably pick it up and put it on a shelf, but I wouldn't spend a large sum of money on this. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.